Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be discussing extroverted sensing and how it manifests in the 8 positions. So no matter who you are, this video should help you identify your own type or a friend's type because everyone has extroverted sensing somewhere. Let's just get right into it. So for dominant SE, these people tend to be really keen on sensory experiences. They like to physically explore and try everything that they can. I find that these people tend to like to try everything once almost when it comes to sensory things, whether that's, trying out a new restaurant or trying a different type of food or going to a new country. They tend to be very fun-loving and enjoy these things, and it's a primary way that these people enrich their world. Since SE is their highest function, they also tend to be very aware of the sensory things around them, and thus it makes it easier for them to connect a bunch of different sensory data together. I know connecting data is more associated with NI, but the thing with higher NI users is that a lot of times they miss certain things that are right in front of them, but for the high SE user, they tend to just get everything, and their NI works on almost a subconscious level in that it's almost like seeing pieces like fall to place. Though it's worth mentioning that connecting all this sensory data is not to predict a future as a higher NI might do. It's basically to have a very vivid knowing of what's going on right now. Now moving on to Auxilary SE. So I've actually typed a few ISFPs and ISTPs who were surprised that they were that type because they said that they're sometimes clumsy. So once again, with all the auxiliary functions, I find that you're quite good at this function. You're better at this function than you are at your tertiary function, but you don't use it as often as a tertiary function usually. And you tend to have to make a conscious effort to use it. So it seems that the Auxiliary SE people, instead of constantly being in tune with their environment, they have to decide to pay attention, then their senses are very active. And when it comes to exploring the sensory world and having physical experiences, these people tend to be more hesitant. They are not usually open to trying everything because whatever they end up trying, they have to be congruent with either their FI or their TI, because first and foremost, they have to follow their own introverted judging framework. Moving on to Tertiary SE, this is an interesting group. I find that they don't tend to try everything. They're not super open to all sorts of physical experiences, but they tend to have a luxurious streak in that they really appreciate the finer things in life. I'm not sure if this has anything to do with their dominant function. Having extrovert judging, you tend to value things that are evident in the external world, whether that's TE, like this thing is just better quality, or FE, like this thing will bring me social value. But most of the tertiary SE users I've known tend to prefer nicer things. As well, they tend to value SE as in concrete data as a way to substantiate their many NI thoughts. In conversation, these people are also very different from people with inferior SE in that if they have a concept that they wish to discuss, it's usually accompanied by a ton of sensory detailed information. So if they want to talk about, for example, the decline of capitalism, they are going to come up with a bunch of companies that have failed. They're going to talk about the sensory in depth before they get to the NI endpoint. And for that reason, a lot of times these people can mistype as sensors. I've actually typed 2 ENFJs now who both thought they were SFJ, so that was really interesting. Moving on to the inferior SE users. Now, these people also are not super aware of their physical environment, but instead of really appreciating it as a way to add weight to their NI, they tend to be kind of afraid of it. a lot of times the sensorially unexpected can overwhelm them and force them to retreat further into their shell. For these people, the INI is so strong that they generally see this future vision, and it's not even like 20 years down the road, but they tend to have an inkling of how things will unfold. But we know the real world is really messy, so when sensory things do not unfold the way they expect, it can be quite a shock. So with all inferior functions, there's a part of them that really values this function, and with the INTJs and INFJs I've known, they tend to be really keen on grabbing these really nice, almost indulgent sensory experiences. But they want to control them in a way. They want to experience indulgence in the sensory realm in a very controlled manner. So if they go to a restaurant that they've gone to several times, they know that the food is really rich and delicious, but maybe this one time they changed chefs or whatever and it was not how it was before. This is going to really annoy the NI of the NI dominance. Yeah, in addition to the sensorially unexpected is the intense experiences. Now, these people tend to have a love and hate relationship with that from what I found. Like some people might really like certain intense experiences, like maybe like driving really quickly, and dislike others, like being on a trampoline or a bungee jumping thing, for example. Now, moving on to SE in the 5th position, or people with dominant SI. Now, I find that these people are very aware of their sensory environment, but they, like the NI DOMs, they also do not really like chaos. So instead of trying everything and being surprised by the unexpected, they prefer to stick with the tried and true method. And this tried and true method is not necessarily a societal method. It could very well be their personal method. It could be like whatever they grew up with. Even things and processes that they've developed for themselves. Although they're pretty okay when it comes to the unexpected sensory experiences, and I find that they can rise up to the challenge and handle those, but I think they greatly prefer having structure and having repetition. Like, I know an ISTJ who was not really on a food budget at all, yet he was always eating the same exact food. That was really interesting because that's so not me. I want to have variety, but I guess he just realized what he liked. He decided that there's no point in trying other stuff or having a variety if that is a food that he liked best. Because of their hesitancy to try out new sensory experiences, despite probably being able to rise to the occasion, some people might see these people as like overly rigid or too structured. Moving on to the 6th slot, SE, or people with auxiliary SI. Now, these people, like people with dominant SI, are also quite aware of their sensory environments, but they tend to be more into past sensory experiences and the ones that they've already had. However, they have higher NE, so there is far greater desire, since their NE is not repressed, to make new their tried and true method. Because these people have NE as their hidden agenda function, they tend to like to explore things for their conceptual merit. Like they have an idea to do something for the intuitive joy of it, but oftentimes it's leads them to go out and do a bunch of things, and this can actually look like very strong extroverted sensing. And thus, these people can look a lot more open and adaptable than the SI dominants. Okay, now this is really interesting. Moving on to the SE blind spot, so-called. So I have this as well as the INTPs out there. Now this is a real issue. So sometimes people think that they have a SE blind spot because they're sometimes clumsy, but I have a slight story for you guys. So one day I woke up with this big gash, like it was maybe 5 inches or 4 inches on my stomach, and it looks like it had bled, but it scabbed over, and I had no idea how I got this. Like, I was not drunk, I didn't do anything physically dangerous. Somehow, like, my stomach just ripped open. I still have the scar, and this story is basically to illustrate that we are so in the intuitive la-la land that a lot of times we do not notice at all what the sensory world is telling us. Like, I can be looking for keys and miss them when they're right in front of my face, that kind of thing. Because when I look at the world, I am seeing more concepts and what's possible rather than what is. And thus I can miss a lot of sensory things that are right in front of me. And the introverted sensing is not really helping me in this case because I'm also thinking about everything that happened in my past. So sometimes I might be doing something out of habit, and when a physical thing changes locations, I might like trip over because I was just performing that sensory task out of habit. And I didn't notice the new reality that is no longer there. Another story is that I went to this new friend's house and I smelled nothing, like I didn't notice any smells whatsoever, and she suddenly started talking about her basil plant. And I looked around, I was like, oh yeah, it's there. But then the moment she said the word basil, I smelled it. Even though I didn't move around in the room, I was sitting there, I didn't smell anything. But when she said the word basil, I guess my introverted sensing remembered the smell of basil and then activated my olfactory senses, and then I could smell it. It was the weirdest thing ever, but like if she hadn't said that, I would not have smelled that until probably if I saw the basil plant perchance, then I would probably smell it. Yeah, so I would say for the SE blind people, we're constantly stuck in this romanticized past and past associations and what we think objects should be based on our internal storehouse. Yeah, what we think they should be and then how things could be, so then we don't actually notice how things are. Finally, we have the 8th slot SE, or people with inferior SI. So obviously these people are also not going to be super aware of their sensory environment. However, their extroverted judging, whether that's TE or FE, is not repressed. So with this higher extroverted judging, it's able to help them fulfill their NE conceptual wonderings. Like if an INFP or INTP was considering making a new lifestyle choice, like maybe moving to a new city or country, they're more likely to just think about that and live that fantasy in their heads and then move on with their day. But the ENXPs are more likely, with their higher JE, make that a reality and to explore those ideas in the real world. And thus, to the outside observer, this might actually look very much like high SE, in that you just see this person going around trying a bunch of things, but the motivation to do that is different. Like, they are not satisfied to do this just for the sensory experience, but what the experience means to them, both on a conceptual layer, like what this means in terms of an idea or an ideal of them, and also on the level of introverted sensing, like what sensory things they have developed a special fondness for that they want to keep forever in their internal storehouse. Okay, that is all I have for you guys today. I hope whoever you are, that was really helpful in determining your own type, or perhaps a friend's type that you're wondering about. If you are still unsure, I do have a typing service that is offered on my website. As well, if you enjoy these videos, please consider supporting this channel on Patreon. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.